You are listening to the official podcast of Mosaic in Los Angeles, a community of faith, love, and hope.
Joy to the World version you've ever sung to. Thank them one more time with me, really quick. And I want John to bring it out. Can you bring it out center stage just in case everybody didn't see it? We got a keytar over here, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for John's keytar. That's pretty rad. Thank you, John. You can take a seat now. Hey, welcome to Mosaic. My name is Hank, and I'm one of the pastors here, and we're just so grateful to celebrate Christmas with you. It might be 16 days until Christmas out there, but in here it's Christmas time. So we're just glad to be a part of your gathering here this morning, or this evening. I'd love to say a prayer as we continue. God, we thank you so much that you brought joy to the world. We're so grateful for life and so grateful for the community we have and so grateful for the people we have and that you brought us into this circular building tonight. God, we know that there is an awesome holiday upon us, but it doesn't slow down the pace and it doesn't slow down the demands and it doesn't slow down the ASAP emails. It doesn't slow down the drama and it doesn't slow down the conflict, and the burdens we carry are still there. So God, I pray for every person here who walked in here with a burden on their shoulders, a weight on their chest, or anxiety in their stomach. And I just pray that for this 1 hour, that you would lift that off of every person here. And that we, in this hour, could just have a peace that passes all understanding. That right now, there would just be a space on every single person here where we could just sense you present and real right here. God, we are so thankful for life, so thankful for your son, Jesus, who gives us this season to celebrate. We ask as we look at the scriptures that you would help us to build our homes. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, welcome to Mosaic, and we're really, really glad to see you, glad to have you. We're in a series called Home for Christmas, and this is week 2. So if you were here last week at week 1, can you just show a hand? I just want to see who's awesome, okay? If you weren't here and you want to catch up, we have a podcast. You can go to mosaic.org and you can find our podcast and kind of catch up. But I'll give you just a little snippet of what we did. We're going through Isaiah chapter 9, the first 7 verses that Joe read for us earlier. And those 7 verses, we're actually, a whole group of us are memorizing those passages of Scripture this Christmas season and for these weeks. And so if you want to join us in that, I'd encourage you, make it your background on your phone, write it down on a piece of paper, put it on your mirror, put it on your dashboard somewhere where you can read it only while you're stopped at a stoplight, and you can follow along with us. The code word for that is Best Christmas Ever. Just everybody say Best Christmas Ever. Isaiah 9, 1-7 is the most poetic and succinct description of what happened in the universe when Jesus stepped into human history. So I want to invite you to memorize that with us as we cover this series. Our series, Home for Christmas, began by us having a conversation about building our household. And that no matter if you're a single person, or no matter how single you feel, or no matter how married you are, or how many people that you're responsible for in your life, if you have children, every decision you make is building your household. That you're building your household with your choices. And so we're bringing the ancient into the present right now in a time in history when we used to be known by our family's house, that I was Hank of House Fortner. And so what I'd love for you to do is I'd love for us to just get in the zone of that, remind each other that we're building our household. So I want you to say hi to the person next to you, but I want you to introduce yourself in the Old English, if you would. And I want you to say, hi, I'm Hank of House Fortner, but your name and your house of your family. I'm Jamar of House Brown. I'm Jacob of House Koo. I want you to give it to them. And then when they say it, you go, oh, nice to meet you, Jamar of House Brown. I'm Hank of House Fortner. And if you want to throw in like an accent or whatever, I feel okay about that. If you want to grab each other by the forearm instead of by the hand, I'm down with that too. But I want you to meet the person next to you and acknowledge your household. So just do that really quick. Next person next to you, to your right and left. In Isaiah chapter 9, verse 1, it says, nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those that are in distress. If you are with us this Christmas, this is our hashtag this year. No more gloom. Say that with me. No more gloom. We are in a no more gloom kind of season. That no matter how much gloominess is coming at you, no matter how much gloominess people want to lay on top of you, or they want to give you their problems, or they want to make problems for you, you just chant to yourself, no more gloom. If somebody comes at you, you just go, hey, no more gloom, man. It's Christmas time. I hate to break it to you. I'll deal with that in January. But that's how verse 1 begins. Nevertheless, there will be, say it with me, no more gloom for those who are in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but in the future, he will honor Galilee of the Gentiles by way of the sea along the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. Verse 3, you have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as men rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For unto us a child is born. Those passages and those 3 verses are what we're going to look at tonight. What I think is so cool about these 3 verses is, growing up for me, Christmas was about almost synonymous with presents. How about you? Like for me, Christmas was like, I would start thinking about what I wanted for Christmas in February. How about you? Just making a list. I'd be cutting things out of a newspaper. I wanted a red BB gun with a compass and a clock that tells time. That was number 1. Number 2 is I wanted a black mountain bike so I'd be invisible. I wanted to ride around the neighborhood invisibly at night. That was my goal. And then my parents tried to sell me on this propaganda. Maybe you got hooked into it too, where it's better to give than to receive. And you're like, what? I just can't even fathom. I literally thought something happens to your brain when you turn into an adult. You stop seeing cause and effect. How could that possibly be better? And then I realized, here's what it is. If you give a person a gift, they're obligated to give one back to you. So if you give them a cheap enough gift and they can't find a gift even cheaper than that, you actually get more than you gave. So I'm thinking in my mind, man, my parents are right. It is better to give than receive as long as you shop at the dollar store. Do you know what I'm saying? But everybody communicated to me that the celebration of Christmas was almost synonymous with snow and jingle bells and Santa and happiness. That on a snowy Christmas morning, Jesus was born in a town called Bethlehem. But the context of Christmas and the conversation of the forthcoming of Christmas is wrapped in words that are poetic sayings about war. See, what I didn't get told, what no one explained to me, is that the conversation of the coming of Christ was a military voice. That Jesus coming into the world was actually a conversation centered around national conflicts. That there was a sense of war and madness and chaos and battle that is the language surrounding the coming of Jesus. It begins by saying, and there will be no more gloom for those who are in distress. For that land of darkness that's heavily oppressed and lightly thought of is going to see light. And you're like, okay, cool, I can wrap my mind around that. But then these next verses, if you're those people going, okay, we're going to see a light, we're going to see a light. Imagine their thoughts as they began to hear the words of this prophet when he said that God has enlarged your nation and increased your joy. In those days, there's 2 ways to enlarge your nation: through marriage or war. And for some people, that's like the same experience. So they're thinking, well, since no one's getting married and our nations aren't marrying each other, then we're going to enlarge our nation through a military strategy. We're going to take back what was ours. We're going to take back what was taken from us. And then he says, and increase your joy. The people will rejoice before you as they rejoice at the harvest. You go, okay, that's going to be a party when we take over our land. And then he says, and men will rejoice as warriors who are dividing up the plunder. There we go back with the military stuff. They go, okay, cool. Not only are we going to get back what's ours, we're going to get to divide up their women. We're going to get to divide up their slaves. We're going to get to divide up their lands. This is going to be a really good day for us because we've been losers for hundreds of years. We've been oppressed for hundreds of years. But when Christ comes, we're going to be the winners. We're going to be victorious. And then the next passage, verse 4, says, for as in the day of Midian's defeat. And the reference to Midian's defeat is a beautiful conversation. Because Midian in that area was a battle that they remembered their whole life. And I don't think it's an accident that this passage is referenced right before Jesus comes. Because they're going, man, a war is about to come. A war is about to happen, and it's going to be like Midian's defeat. It's going to be like the days of Midian. See, Midian was, and I'll give you a little snapshot of this. If you want to read it on your own, it's in a book called Judges in a chapter number 7. And in there was a guy named Gideon who was the leader of the Israelite military. The Midians were known for their ability to amass large armies. The way they won was just by having more people than you. So they weren't good fighters and they weren't great at battle. They just got more people than you did. And so you could kill as many as you wanted, but eventually they were just going to swarm you like locusts. They were described in Judges chapter 7 as the sand of the seashore. That's how many they were. They were like the stars in the sky. Probably guesstimate around 500,000, maybe 500,000 soldiers. Gideon had 30,000. And he knows that he's got to keep the Midianites from taking his people as their slaves so that they fight on behalf of the Midianites. So he takes his men into this place called Mount Gilead. And in Mount Gilead, he gathers all of his troops and he starts to have sort of a crazy interaction with God, like a face-to-face conversation almost. I mean, they're like in dialogue. Have you ever known people who, they talk about talking to God like they're like friends that like talking on the phone? Have you ever met those people? Where it sounds like they were on a swing set at the beach just telling stories with each other. And you're like, yeah, I was like, God this. And God was like, what are you thinking? You know, and you're like, I'm like, how do you do that? Like, that's so cool that God is in your head like that. That is so awesome. Now, I know I've heard the voice of God in my life. It just doesn't always feel like a phone conversation. It just doesn't always feel like, God, this is the whole thing, and then God comes back and gives me another thing. It doesn't feel like we're palling around. It feels more cosmic than that. But when you've got an army of 30,000 protecting God's people, and there's 500,000 soldiers, I think God jumps in and goes, okay, we're not going to do this too slowly. We're going to do this faster. So they start having like a back and forth conversation. They start having a conversation, and God tells Gideon at Mount Gilead with his 30,000 soldiers facing 500,000, he says, in order to bring about a victory, you have too many men. Gideon must have been like, can I ask God to repeat himself? Is that like allowed? You have too many men. You got to thin them out a little bit. Gideon must have thought, thin them out. I have 30,000 against 500,000, which tells us that God works on a different resource metric. That it might be better for us to have less of the right thing than it would to have more of the wrong thing. And so he tells Gideon, I want you to tell all of your men that if they're afraid, they should leave Mount Gilead. Tell all of them, if anyone is afraid, they should leave. And Gideon must have been thinking, that disqualifies me. If you could, if it's possible for you to make a different category, that would be great. But he is faithful, walks up to his men and says, if every man is afraid, I want them to walk out. And he loses 20,000 men in one conversation. So now he's down to 10,000 men. Then he takes those 10,000 men and he has a conversation with God again. And God says, you still have too many men to bring about a victory. Gideon must have been like, okay, what's now? You know, like I wanted to win. And there's still 500,000 people. It's like, what's even the difference between 30,000 and 10,000? They're going to crush you. And he says, I want you to take them down to the water. And when they get down to the water, whoever lays on his stomach and drinks out of the river, laps up water like a dog, I want you to tell them to leave. And everybody who's down on one knee and scoops the water up with their hand and stays alert and stays at attention, I want you to pull them aside and say, you're going to stay. Well, as you can imagine, in a group of 10,000 people, he was probably walking around going, guys, please, guys, don't lay down, don't lay down. You know, he's thinking, I can't live without all these soldiers. But he walks up and dismisses all those soldiers and comes down to a group of 300 men. So now he's gone from 30,000 to 300 against 500,000, and God says, that's just the right size. Which to me just speaks volumes to the fact that you can have the right people surrounded by the wrong people, and they can't make an impact. But if you can get the right people on a team together, you can do incredible things. Gideon tells all of his men, I want you to take a clay jar, a torch, a horn, and a sword. And I want you to break up into 3 groups of 100, around 500,000 people, and they surrounded the camp where they were encamped. And then he said, I want you to just follow my lead. He didn't even give them instructions, which by the way, if I'm gonna go up against war against 500,000 people, that's all I want. A clay jar, a torch, a sword, and a horn. That horn, I don't know if I'm gonna play my funeral song or whatever. It's gonna be a dangerous moment for me. And they get surrounding all these men. And Gideon starts it off. and he breaks the clay pot against a stone. And then he blows the trumpet, and he blows the horn he has, and he lights the torch. And everyone does that. Now, can you imagine being a huge army and then all of a sudden realizing you're completely surrounded, and you're hearing, I don't really get that it was panic-making, but apparently it was. I don't know what sound a clay jar against a rock makes, but if you can imagine 300 of those all around you, enough that it sounded like some kind of I don't know if it sounds like they had a team of locusts or like ants or something coming at them. I don't know what that sound would be. But they crush it. The men go crazy. They go chaotically. I don't know if they were drunk or confused or whatever it was, but they just start fleeing and they just start running away. Men who were not committed to the mission that they were a part of. They were just hired swords, running. And while they're running, they're stabbing each other. They're cutting each other. They're fighting against each other. They're battling against each other. And Gideon's men are just standing there blowing their horns. They're watching all of these men just flee. And so they send messengers along the valley that they're running going, hey, so this huge army is going to be running by you. Could you kill them on their way past you? And everybody goes, absolutely, that sounds great. And so they kill all the men as they're running down this valley, and they just keep coming down for days and days and days. Now, can you imagine being one of the 20,000 that left and hearing that story and being like, right, I was afraid. I didn't know all I had to do was blow a horn. That's different than fighting against 500,000 men. But there is something to the fact that these men were selected based on two criteria. That if there were two criteria existed, they couldn't be a part of this incredible group of people. That there was the first thing, that it was a self-selecting option, was the first round. 20,000 men walked away because God said, if you're afraid, you got to leave. But can you imagine being a group of 30,000 people against 500,000? Everybody was afraid. I guarantee everyone had a sense of fear in them. The question wasn't, are you afraid? The question was, are you going to let fear be more powerful than your resolve? Are you going to let fear of your own safety be more powerful than what you're trying to accomplish here? Is it more powerful and more meaningful than your survival? See, I have fear that takes me out of certain things all the time. Anybody here surf? Anybody's a surfer, just by a show of hands? Yeah. That guy definitely surfs. He surfs a lot, apparently. And so I'm surfing out at San Onofre, Old Man's, and I'm doing this stand-up paddleboarding. And I really enjoy surfing. It's wonderful. I'm terrible at it, but it's a fun experience being in the water and amongst all of the creatures there. And I'm longboarding, which is different than regular, when you see the cool surfers doing their thing. You're standing on top of the paddleboard and you're just looking like Jesus out there on the water. You know what I mean? Which looks really peaceful, but it's not. You're just trying to stay balanced the entire time. And a lot of times it'll be for no reason, I'll just fall into the water, which I can't imagine what the people on the beach go, I wonder what happened to that guy. He was doing fine, and then he just fell straight into the water. That's me. And we're out a ways, maybe 300 or 400 yards from the beach, and we're waiting there in a group of surfers for a set of waves to come in. And as we're waiting, the guy next to me, and it's called Old Man's because all these old men are jacked. Where I would have had to start working out 10 years ago to look like these guys at 60. They're just huge dudes. And this guy next to me is just slightly behind me, and then my friend is off to the side. And we're just hanging out, waiting for the waves, and the guy next to me starts backing up going, Whitey, 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 and paddling backwards back towards the beach. And I'm like, dude, I know I haven't been in the sun a whole lot, but it feels a little weird that you won't associate with me if my skin is blinding you. And I'm confused by, what do you mean by Whitey? I'm looking over at my friend. My friend is like, I don't know what he's saying. And I look back over this way, and I see this large gray figure under the water coming straight towards me, pass underneath my board, go in between me and my friend, and keep going. Now, this thing was probably the size of I don't know, a small pickup truck, but in my mind, it's the size of a whole submarine. I mean, I'm looking at this thing going, oh, Whitey, oh, a great white shark, okay? Emphasis on the word great and emphasis on the word shark. He left those two words out. He just said Whitey, so I was, what, nah. Whitey sounds like your friend. It sounds like a buddy that you have. A great white shark sounds like something you should run from. So I just kind of, as I see it coming my way, which felt like it was happening so fast or so slowly, I pick my feet up onto the board because you can kind of do that with a stand-up board. But then I start wobbling, and I'm like, oh no! I'm like, Watch me try to save myself and actually turn into fish food in the very second. So I'm just like wobbling around and I look over at my buddy, just go, David, like, goodbye. I don't know what to say. Besides, this is all we're getting here. And he comes this way, and my friend's like, what's going on? What? Missed the whole thing. And I'm going, you almost got eaten. I just saved you. You don't even know. I'm trying to help him. So we paddle backwards, and I'm like, that's good. I feel like we've been surfing all of 8 minutes, and I feel like that's been a good day. It's been a good day. I feel like I'm done. And I'm paddling backwards, like trying to keep it cool, and then I just turn around, and I'm paddling back so fast, as fast as I can. I'm falling off of the board. I'm like, it's as if I'm drowning. I'm trying to get back to the land so fast. And like sea kelp, when that stuff would like just graze my leg on the way back, I'd freak out like I'm gonna die. People are like, again, what is wrong with this guy just trying to get himself back to the beach? I finally get to the sand, and I'm like, I'm good. I'm good right here on the good old US of A. You know what I mean? Don't need to get out there into the water. I feel good about this beach moment. Fast forward to like 3 weeks later, my buddy's like, hey, we're gonna go down to Old Man's again. You wanna come out? That would be great. We're gonna grill. Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I grab the board. I start walking out into the ocean, and everybody's just charging out there. I get out to like knee-deep water, and I'm just like, that's good. That's a good day. That was a good day. I'm glad I drove 2 hours in traffic to be down here. I feel good about getting wet to my knees, because in my mind, I'm so consumed with fear of, I'm not one with the ocean and one with the great white shark. I saw him, he passed by, not gonna give him another chance. Do you know what I mean? I met a guy last night, and he's like, dude, I live in Manhattan Beach. I live right by the beach. I can see the ocean. You can come to my place. You can park. Let's go surfing. How do I have the heart to tell this guy that I'm so afraid of getting back in the water, that's just never going to happen? So I'm like, cool. Yeah, that would be really fun. Let's do that another lifetime away from now. But my fear resounding or surrounding surfing is way more powerful than my resolve to get in the water or try to catch a wave or look cool. My fear is the deciding factor there. See, with Gideon's army, he had to find people whose fear existed, but that it wasn't more powerful than what they were committed to accomplishing. That it wasn't more powerful than what they were doing. See, I think for your life and for my life, we can let fear find its way in us. And it might even be wise fear. It might even be, that's a great white shark. That's appropriate to be afraid of that. And there might be things in your life and in my life where you go, man, I'm afraid of the outcome. I'm afraid of what can happen to me in this outcome. But you'll know that you've come across something that's a calling on your life when you've come to a place where you go, that may be the outcome for my life. But the outcome of success is so important, I have to risk this for this. You'll know that you've come across where your life finds its sweet spot and finds its sound when you pause and you go, my personal safety is not more important than the mission that we're on, than what I'm accomplishing and what I'm doing. So I think in order to have victory, Gideon had to remove people who were gonna be so consumed with their personal safety, they'd lose sight of the accomplishment. The second thing he had to get rid of were the people who laid flat on the ground and drank up water like a dog. Those were people who, and I don't even totally blame them, they were just thinking, I'm surrounded by 10,000 of my men. How dangerous could it be? I need water in a very dry climate. And so they laid down on the ground and just indulged themselves in water. But there were still those 300 who thought, I'm the person who's keeping an eye out for the rest of these men who are laying on their stomach. I'm the person who's making sure that nothing can happen. See, in the midst of your life and mine, indulgence can be a trigger that can just cause us to lose sight of what we're trying to do. Indulgence can creep into our life very slowly, where we start to go, yeah, I can take what's mine. I deserve this. I need this. This is a part of my life. This is a part of what I need in my life. And we lose sight of the fact that indulgence or overindulgence or self-indulgence can actually put us at risk, can actually destroy part of our lives. I mean, how many people do we have to watch who move into stardom or move into resource and have everything at their fingertips and they indulge themselves into destroying their own lives? Indulgence is a thing that starts out small. I need this. I deserve this. And then it starts to destroy us. See, if you have a company or you have a team and you have people who are either afraid or controlled by fear, or who see indulgence or saving themselves or getting their own as their number one thing, you're not going to win with those people. You're just not going to accomplish that. If you're a part of a team and you go, oh man, I identify with that, I'm the indulgent person, there's just going to be a ceiling to what you're capable of accomplishing and how much you're going to be entrusted with. Because the more afraid you are of your personal safety and the more focused you are on getting your own or on being indulgent, the less resource you can actually be entrusted with. You're going to have to be operated in a world where you are taking instead of being given and entrusted with. See, I don't think it's a mistake that Midian is mentioned right before Jesus. I don't think it's a mistake that this war is mentioned and referenced right before the coming of Christ. Because when Jesus stepped into the world and he called his disciples and he chose to change the face of the planet, he did it with people who were okay risking their personal safety. He did it with people who were okay sacrificing their personal indulgence. He didn't use the people who were the most talented or the strongest. He didn't use the people who were of the highest pedigree. He didn't use the people who had the most amount of resource. All those things are secondary to a person who's going, I'm willing to risk my own personal safety. I'm willing to risk my own personal value. I'm willing to risk my own personal treasures to accomplish something awesome. Because it probably sounded nuts that Gideon was going to take 300 people and defeat 500,000. But it probably sounded even crazier that Jesus was going to take 12 men and he was going to change the face of the planet. And that they were going to unleash a gospel that brought life to all people. See, if God is doing something in your life, and I guarantee you he is, if God is nudging you and calling you into something, it probably sounds insane when you write it down on paper. It probably sounds crazy when you tell people the story. It probably sounds a little outlandish as you even think about it in your mind. But God is nudging you to do these things, and you can know that the things that will trip you up and keep you from being able to accomplish those things are fear and indulgence. You know that if you can purge those things and have a wise look at what's going on. I'm not saying you just go, hey, blindly, I'm just diving into this thing, but not letting fear control you and not letting indulgence be a thing that helps you destroy your impact, your influence, or your ability to be entrusted with more. Because when Jesus stepped into human history, these are the people he worked with. These are the people he did amazing things with, were people who said, I want to be a part of this mission. Regardless of what it costs me, I'll lose my life. I'll lose everything I have to be a part of what Jesus is doing. And that's where you gain your life. That's where you find life. See, the people who are hearing this must have thought, man, a war is coming and it's going to be awesome. A war is coming and it's going to be incredible, because they're looking down here going, yep, a light has dawned. He's going to enlarge our nation. We're going to war. He's going to have us rejoice because we're dividing up the plunder. He's going to use us like Midian's defeat to shatter the yoke and the bar across their shoulders and the rod of their oppressors. And then he pivots. And in verse 5, it says something that would probably sounded like it was said out of turn. Oh, you must have read the wrong thing. Can you give me this next thing? Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning and will be fuel for the fire. They must have gone, wait, hold on a second. We need those things. We're going to war. And then there's the next verse where it says, for unto us a child is born, which must have also sounded like, hold on a second. We're just talking about war. It's like there's going to be battle and there's going to be war and there's going to be blood and then a baby's born. Here comes a baby. Wonderful. You know, like you must have gone, it must have just sounded like, wait, I can't keep up with what's happening. I thought we were going to war. Now all of a sudden we're burning our weapons and we're burning our garments and we're burning our boots. And then a child is born. It would be like if you were going to play a doubleheader and go, we're gonna watch Braveheart, and then it's going to go seamlessly into Juno. How's that feel? It's going to be so good. It's going to be, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I can't wait. You're going to go, how is this the case? Unless that child was going to be Jesus. And his entrance into human history was going to matter that we burned the garments and we burned the boots. See, these visuals are important. Because what happens is, he tells them, we're going to burn those garments that are rolled in blood. These garments would have been small. This is a large white garment that is carried by a soldier. When he struck down in war, his comrades would take that garment and roll up his blood in it and take it back to his family so that they had a piece of him from the battlefield. They had a reminder of him. That family would cherish that garment as a reminder not only of their fallen family member, but they would also carry it and they would hoist it high to remind their neighbors and their countrymen what the Philistines did to them. They would remind them who the Midianites were. They would remind them who the Assyrians were, that those garments rolled in blood would be held high so people knew what had been done to them. And when the prophet Isaiah says, we're going to need to burn all those garments, they must have thought, why would we do that? Why would we forget what all these people have done to us? See, there's a meaning here. There's a message here that these garments that are rolled in blood and that are burned, what's important about this is that when Jesus comes into human history, all of the past pains and hurt and scars and burdens and brokenness are no longer yours to carry. All of the brokenness and wounds that you and I carry in our life, as soon as you come into a relationship with Jesus and as you move with Jesus, all those things are no longer yours to carry. Those scars that people put on you, those wounds that people gave you, the blood of yours that they spilled is no longer yours to carry. That when Jesus comes into your life, when Jesus steps into your world, when you acknowledge Jesus in your life and connect to him, that you get to heal all those wounds. And all of those things that have been done to you get to be burned in the fire, and you go, I'm going to remember them no more. But those garments also represent the blood that you and I spilled. They represent the things that you and I did to other people. They represent the hurt and pain that you and I caused. And when we burn them in the fire, Jesus' role in our life is he says, you don't have to carry your mistakes either. You don't have to carry the blood you spilled. You don't have to carry the wounds you caused. You don't have to carry the things that you wish could be erased from this book. We're going to be free. See, blood also represented freedom. If it wasn't for bloodshed, there was no freedom. If you were a free nation, it's because someone shed blood to protect you and your nation. If you were a spiritual person and you were following the traditions of your religion, blood had to be shed to cover your sins. Something had to die and blood had to shed. When this message and this passage is saying that we're going to burn these garments, he's saying there's going to be no more need for that. There's going to be no more need for bloodshed. We are going to step into a new era where Jesus is going to answer all these things. So for you tonight, if you came into this building with garments rolled in blood, if you came into this building with reminders of scars that you gave people, if you came into this room with a reminder of the way that people hurt you, see, Jesus introduces to us a third option: peace. Instead of victory or defeat, he introduces us this third option of peace and forgiveness. And I need you to know that if you came in here carrying that garment and reminding yourself of the things that you've done to other people, that when you come into a relationship with Jesus, you're forgiven. Those things are gone and no longer yours to carry. If you came in here with garments rolled in blood, reminding yourself of what people have done to you, those are no longer yours to carry. But you need to know, if you choose to carry them, you carry them by choice. But Jesus is constantly knocking at your door saying, I want you to let those things go. Throw them in the fire, I want you to be free. See, this message in Isaiah of rolling up the garments and throwing them in the fire is that you and I get to be free. No more bloodshed. But the second thing he offers is he says the boots are going to be thrown into the fire as well, which also must have sounded crazy. Why are we going to throw our boots into the fire? Timberland's not going to send me another pair if I need them to go to war, right? I've got to find an animal large enough that I can use his skin and tie and dry out the skin so that I can use his hide to build myself another pair of boots. That boots meant that you could travel. Boots meant that you could go to war. And boots were a marker of the fact that you were a seasoned warrior. But if I burn them up, I got nothing to defend myself with. I've got nothing to wear when I attack my foe. See, there was two real notes in the world at that time: victory and defeat. There were two options: victory and defeat. You only lived in one or the other. It describes it in the very beginning of Isaiah, verse 9, chapter 1, verse 9. It says, there will be no more gloom for those who are in distress, those people living in defeat, those people who are living as losers. And then Midian's defeated. But when Jesus comes into the world, he offers this other option: an end of wars, an end of attack, and an end of defeat, and an end of victory, and an end of defeat, and this place called peace. That's this option that so many people miss out on. If you're in a relationship or you're dating somebody, you know that sometimes, or I'll say all the times, winning does not mean winning. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're married and you win an argument, you don't win. Do you know what I mean? You catch my drift? If you're in a car riding with your wife or your girlfriend and there's an opening where your logic is bulletproof and you're going to win the conversation and you just dive in there and you just win and you crush her, you know? And then you get that apology you've been waiting on, the vibe in the car, you're not singing Tom Petty tunes together. Do you know what I'm saying? You don't get to this happy place afterwards like, oh, so glad I could finally win that one. I just feel like such a victor. Do you know what I mean? If you're dating somebody, let's say you've only been dating for like 2 months and you win, you lose. Do you catch my drift? That's true in our relationships. That's true in like roommate relationships. Winning does not equal winning. I had a roommate for like a year, and we like fought all the time. All the time. It was like anything I said, he resisted. And if I was hanging with my friends and I just toss out like an opinion, which I don't have a lot of those, so it was like a rare, that's not true, that's a lot of that. I toss out like an opinion, he'd be like, oh, no, and he would come out of his room to disagree with like whatever. And it's like, oh my word. But there was one doozy of a night where we just battled, and like in front of people, which is somehow like a big battle like that in front of people just starts feeling good, you know what I mean? I feel like Chris Paul or something. I was like, I had an audience. And he left an opening, and I won. I mean, I won in a way that made him look just stupid. His logic was so messed up, and I just made him look so dumb. And he was so passionate at first, and then it felt equally as stupid. And for like a split second, I felt awesome, like I'd won. But the second after that, I realized that I had destroyed our relationship. We moved out a couple months later and went our separate ways, and we didn't speak for 3 years. So much for winning. Because I did my best to crush him because I thought, I just got to win. I'm sick of this so much, I got to win. See, the world operates very much in this competitive, if I lose and someone else wins, that's bad. If I win, someone else has to lose. If there's 2 of us, one of us is going down. Victory or defeat. We only live in those 2 options in so many times in our life. But what Jesus offers is this third option of peace. That you and I can live in community, that you and I can live in relationship, that you and I can live in a place where it's not about me beating you or you beating me or us having conflict and then one of us winning. It's just about us moving to a place of peace. See, when Isaiah says that we should burn our boots, he's saying your ability to crush your enemies is no longer something you're going to need. Because we're going to move into an era where wars are over. And this works interpersonally too. If you came in here and you got your boots strapped on and you're ready for a conflict and you're ready for a fight, or you know that out there's somebody and you know you can crush them. It's Isaiah who's saying it's time to put those into the fire and move into a place of peace. That for you and for me, when we move into our life, we can operate in a victory-defeat mentality, but we'll miss out on peace. See, when Jesus came into human history, and when they do that head-spinning turn of garments rolled in blood and boots used in battle are all going to be burned in the fire, and unto us a child is born, it's a statement that there's a new day, that war is no longer necessary, that you and I can live in a place of community and a place of peace because Jesus is going to absorb all of the drama in your life and in my life. He's going to absorb all the heartache that you have brought onto yourself, that you and I have brought onto people around us. He's going to absorb all those things and give us an option to have peace. See, I think there's so much conflict in the world because people have chaos inside them and they're just trying to make their outsides match their insides. I think there's people who live without a sense of peace in their life. And so conflict and chaos, at least you're in conversation. At least you're dialoguing. At least there's movement. At least you feel alive. But see, when that child was born, he was born for you and for me so that those high-level RPMs that go on inside us, that anxiety in our stomach and weight on our chest could be lifted. And that you and I could live in a place of peace. See, as I mentioned last week, you're building your home with the decisions that you make and the choices that you have. For you and for me this Christmas, what I want to invite us into is I want to invite us into building households of peace. that you and I, no matter what challenges we face in our life, no matter what missions we have in our world, no matter what we're trying to do with our life, that we would face it all with an overwhelming sense of peace. I was reflecting last week about my household and what I don't want to have. And I'm the kind of person who hates to be interrupted. How about you? Yeah, like if I'm doing something and you like go, hey, I'm like, if I ignore you once or twice, I'm hoping you're going to get the hint. Does that make sense? I'm like, I'm going to keep doing this and then just like send me a text or whatever. But my wife thinks that's the most annoying thing ever. If she's like, hey, I have a question, it's like, text me. You know, that doesn't go well for me, okay? But she likes to like, when she thinks of something, say something. So I'm like, okay, yeah, totally. So what I've realized out of our years of marriage is that I snap a lot. And I don't like it about myself, but I'm not even doing it. I'm like focused, and then I come out of it. And I realize that like in our household, that I'm just short when I'm doing something. And I just thought, I know it's small, but I just thought, I just don't want my daughter to grow up in that. I just want my daughter to grow up in a household of peace. So I've been practicing this all week long. It's your fault, because I had that conversation with you last Sunday, and then I was like, oh man, I can't do that. So when she's like, hey, I'm just like, yes? You know, like, I got RPMs, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh man. But I'm like, yes, dear, that's wonderful. Because if I can create a space of peace, then my daughter Cora at 7 months old, no idea. Do you know what I mean? As she gets older, I'm just going to go, I just want her to know that she's in a household of peace. I want to invite you into the chaos of your world for you to answer with peace, not conflict or defeat. I want to invite you to take a deep breath tonight in the chaos that I know some of us are facing. You might be here tonight and you're facing career madness. You're facing chaos with your family. You're facing chaos with your finances. I know there's people in this room who are facing bankruptcy and massive debt. I know there's people in this room that are facing huge legal issues. I know there's people in this room that are facing heavy, heavy amounts of disappointment. And the Proverbs say that hope deferred makes a heart sick. So you might not be in any conflict with a person, but you might be in conflict inside you. Because you're like, I'm just tired of trying. And it might just be heavy on you. And I want to invite you this Christmas to just answer with peace. For you to take a deep breath and go, I'm going to live a life of peace. I'm going to choose that third option. And by connecting to Jesus and by inviting Jesus into every moment and every anxiety-focused space in my life, I'm going to let him interrupt my gloom. I'm going to let him move in and go, I know it was a crazy, chaotic, maddening time on the planet when Jesus arrived as a baby. And people waited and waited and waited for him to bring peace. Your chaos may not end today, but that's what Advent is. Advent is us counting down into the days when Jesus is born. Similar to those people who waited and waited and waited generation and generation for Jesus to step into the world and bring peace. I want to invite you tonight to allow Jesus to interrupt your gloom. And if you're here and you've never connected to Jesus, I want to invite you to let him give you peace. For you to go, I just am going to declare that Jesus is Lord. I'm going to declare that he's the one in my life who can bring life and bring healing and take away from all of these things. I don't want to live in victory or defeat anymore. I want to live in peace. And if you're here and you're following Jesus and you go, but I still got the craziness and I still got the chaos and I still got the gloom, I just want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to go, I'm going to just connect to the peace of Jesus through this whole thing. Because I have the Jesus who came in the midst of chaos right in front of me. He's connected to you and he's connected to me, and he wants our life. He wants our worlds to be spaces of peace. So that when people come into our aura, when people come into your zone, when people come into your space, they go, the world just slowed down around here. You're still doing lots of things and you're still doing amazing, but there's a peace about you. I want that for you this Christmas. How about you? I want that in your household this Christmas. So no matter the conflict and no matter the chaos, I'm going to invite Jesus to interrupt your gloom in a crazy and powerful way. You up for that? Yeah. So I'm going to say a prayer over you. I'm going to pray a prayer of peace over you, if you'll pray this with me. I want to invite God to do something amazing in your life and bring peace to every one of your situations. If you would, as we pray, just bow your head and close your eyes. And if you would, just hold your hands open in your lap if you feel comfortable doing that. God, we thank you so much that your son Jesus brought us the third option. That it's not victory and it's not defeat, it's just peace. I ask God that you would cover every person in this room with an overwhelming sense of peace that passes all understanding. I ask you, God, to do an amazing thing inside each person in this room. That you would bring peace into their households, that you would bring peace into their apartment complexes, that you would bring peace to their conflict with their neighbors, that you would bring peace to their workplaces, that you would bring peace into their careers, God, that you would bring peace into their souls. That every person here, that you would just interrupt our gloom this Christmas so that we take a deep breath. And when we take that deep breath, God, we are just filled with your peace. We know that you have shamed large armies throughout history. That with Jericho, you brought down those walls of that city with the sound of a trumpet. That you used music to bring down a strong fortress. God, we know that you used music to confuse an army of 500,000 and cause them running away, that Gideon's men didn't have to swing a sword. We know that you use music to win battles. In our battle, I pray that you would use music, that you would use this music to win our battles. To right now in this room and in this space, with our hands open, we just give you our chaos. We give you our conflict. We give you our war. We give you our battle, and we go, you can have this. We just want peace. I pray that right now in this room, with this music, we chase away all the chaos. We chase away all the madness. And God, that you would fill every person in this room with a peace that passes all understanding, that can come only from you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
They told me, ba-ra-ba-bum-bum, a newborn king to see, ba-ra-ba-bum-bum. The finest gifts we bring, ba-ra-ba-bum-bum, to lay before the king, ba-ra-ba-bum-bum, ba-ra-ba-bum-bum, ba-ra-ba-bum-bum. So to honor him, ba-ra-ba-bum-bum, when we come. Little baby, ba-ra-ba-bum.
Everybody say, no more gloom. One more time, no more gloom. Give these guys one more round of applause, and they do an amazing job. They were awesome. Okay, you can have a seat. Our hope for you tonight is that you would allow God to interrupt your gloom, to interrupt the madness in your world, to interrupt any chaos or any battles you fight. And that this Christmas would be a moment where you pause and you go, I'm going to not choose victory and not choose defeat. I'm going to choose peace. I pray peace over your household this Christmas. You up for that? That's amazing.
Thanks for listening to the Mosaic podcast. For more information on the Mosaic community, including gathering times and locations, and how you can financially support the podcast, check us out online at mosaic.org.